Hello everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing Zero Theorem, which is a new film directed by cult director Terry Gilliam. I love me some Terry Gilliam for so many reasons. He's just an awesome visionary, and I've been a fan since my late teens. I mean, come on, look at the films that he's done. You know, 12 Monkeys, Brazil, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the list goes on and on and on. I think he is the quintessential definition of what an auteur director is, because when you watch his films, you really are entering Terry Gilliam land, which is very, very different from anybody else's. And, you know, only he could create something that unique and special to his vision. It's quirky, it's psychedelic, dystopian Candyland on acid. I always say the great thing about his movies is that it's almost like you're getting to have a free hallucinogenic trip, or as close as you can to it. It really is, because, I mean, all the time, even with, especially with this film, I was watching it and the whole time I'm like, am I high? Did I take something? And then I'm just like, no, of course you didn't. It's just the film. So either I'm going crazy or I have really bad short-term memory loss, but the film is effective. So this film is actually quite similar to a couple of his other films in that it's a very, you know, kind of post-apocalyptic, futuristic film. And so it is similar to films like 12 Monkeys and Brazil. In fact, some people would even maybe consider this almost like the third part in a trilogy or the third part in a series of films. So the story revolves around a character named Cohen, played by Christoph Waltz, and he is a computer programmer who works for this very kind of big corporate organization called The Management. What I love about the character that Waltz is playing is that he's sort of this blank slate for us to kind of project ourselves onto. I mean, he really is, because he's bald, he has no eyebrows, he really is very neutral looking, and it's just, it's cool because he is that kind of neurotic misfit that we all kind of are deep down, and he's in this very strange Orwellian society, and he's kind of a walking contradiction in that he's this guy who, you know, he lives by himself in this big church doing his work and constantly waiting for this phone call that's going to tell him what the meaning of life is, and he's very disconnected from the rest of the world and from his habitat. And he's constantly being burdened by, you know, thoughts of death and just being in this existential crisis. Yet he's constantly kind of being pulled back into the confines of his world by just the fact that he needs to connect and that he has human tendencies, that he is human like the rest of us. There's a lot to love here in terms of just the imagery. It's very visually arresting, and there's so many little hidden symbols. It's very much like an Orson Welles movie, and just in terms of just the set design and just the mise-en-scene and all of that. There's a lot of religious symbolism, lots of social commentary, and, you know, etc. And it's built into this kind of very cluttered Willy Wonka chocolate factory type of world. It's one of those things where when I watch other Terry Gilliam movies, but even this one as well, I always feel like I have to watch it multiple times in order to see all the little symbols and what it all means. There are a lot of things to admire about the film, and in terms of just the point of view that it takes. And one thing I love is how it views advertising and kind of the future of it, because advertising plays a big role in the movie, just in terms of just the background and how it feeds into the core story. And it's basically just about how we are brainwashed, our entire society is. We are brainwashed into thinking that we are so special, we are the greatest, that we deserve happiness and this paradise, and that we're just so special compared to someone else, compared to the rest of the world. And that's just not the case. It reminds me actually of that Bob Dylan song, classic, where he, you know, the lyric goes something like, advertising signs, they con you into thinking you're the one. Same thing, it's just not true. And it's hard for us to accept that. It's hard for us to really be alone in the universe and accept that we aren't that significant in the big scheme of things. And that's the irony of the Christoph Waltz character as well. There's this one part of the movie that they kind of joke about it. You know, the whole film is very satirical, and having this protagonist here, usually when it's in a film like a typical Hollywood movie, you'll have the protagonist and they are the one. It's up to them to fix things and to make things right again. And in this film, it's like they're kind of poking fun at that. There's this joke where one of the characters is saying something along the lines of, it's a Matrix joke, and he's saying, "You are the one, Neo, you are the one." And he's like, "Really, really?" And he's like, "Nah, I'm just kidding." And it's just, I love that. And the movie has a sense of humor about itself in that way. And it's kind of saying, yes, we are another misanthropic, futuristic cautionary tale, but it uses those conventions to kind of experiment and show multifaceted sides of how the world can be seen in the future. This is a very thoughtful piece, and I absolutely loved it, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's quite the level of depth as maybe some of Terry Gilliam's other works. I just don't think it has that same innovative quality or just depth of its predecessors. The film kind of becomes a bit expository, overboard expository in some ways, in the sense that it kind of spells out the ideas that are going on. And I get that. I understand that the film's trying to be satirical, and so at times it needs to explain itself to kind of bring the point across that they're making fun of themselves, if that makes sense. But I don't think that it had quite the level of wit as some of his other films to convey those ideas. An example would be like the female lead in the film. She's very important as a character and as a metaphor for the film in terms of, what connection means as opposed to, what you want in terms of like your lusts and your desires and things like that. But I wanted more from her, and I wanted more from her motivations, especially towards the end of the film when you realize she really is a real person. So I think overall I kind of wanted more depth in terms of just her character and just more wit, I think, in terms of how she was portrayed. But again, I absolutely loved this film, and I loved its philosophy. Yes, the film is kind of grimy and dark at times, but it's basically saying, or at least that what I got from it is that, don't get too lost in yourself and in the search for the meaning of life and death and all of this, to kind of be able to live in the world and enjoy yourself and to, fall in love and do all of these great things that we're meant to do here. It's like I'm sorry I always bring up Orson Welles, but what can I say? I love him. But it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. Our songs will all be silenced eventually, but what of it? Go on singing. And I really got that sense towards the end of the film. This is a great film for people who love wacky, weird Terry Gilliam films, and people that are also just really in an existential crisis, because aren't we all? But anyways, that's my review. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, follow the link below. And if you would like to like my Facebook page, it's weird, follow the link below that one. And thank you all for listening. Have a lovely day.